One thing all Auburn and Florida fans can agree on, thank goodness this rivalry is back.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, this is a crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Gators. I'm Zach Blackerby. He is Brandon Olsen. And in case you haven't heard, both Auburn and Florida have first-year head coaches. Oh, yeah, and they both opened their SEC tenures against each other week 3 at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Fans are getting a little feisty, finding the opposite fans in the comment sections, which is good. We both welcome it. Thank you so much. But, man, like, obviously we've talked about how it's an arms race between Golesh and Sumrall, both in similar situations, both programs in similar situations. We've all wanted this Auburn-Florida rivalry to come back. This isn't how I thought we'd get here, but I think it's safe to say, Brandon Olsen, we are back. The rivalry is absolutely back.
Yeah, I can't wait. I know that we're both in similar situations, but obviously my side is better than your side.
There it is.
There it is. Yeah, both sides are saying it. Why can't I? Right? Both sides are like, yeah, first year head coach, a bunch of turnover, but my side's better. I'm looking forward.
Yeah,
to
bringing in two quarterbacks you don't really know anything about. Yeah, that's a great spot to be in. Absolutely.
Yeah, awesome. You guys have 5 new starting offensive linemen. That's always what you're looking for. That's the sign of success is always that. I can't wait to see it. Both sides again in just spots where we're like, we have no idea what the hell we're going to be. But I have more faith in my team, and that's how we're going to go through this whole summer, and I can't wait. And again, like I said, Auburn, I hate you, so I'm looking forward to Jordan-Hare and beating you there.
Jordan-Hare.
Jordan. I'll tell you what, you beat the Florida Gators there, and I will respect it.
You'll call it Jordan. No. You'll call it the right name. Yeah. I mean, what do you think? What do you think the most important aspect on field of this is right now? Because you and I had this conversation, excuse me, like early in the calendar year. We talked about the arms race of, okay, both of these teams have to attack the portal. They both did. Different strategy on how they attacked it, which I think is interesting in and of itself. But now that the rosters are formed, maybe not the depth chart, there's still some pieces to work out.
Yeah.
What do you think the most important aspect of it is now at this given time?
I think for both of these teams, it's going to be genuinely just coming on the offensive line. For both sides, you're going to be figuring out what that's going to look like. I know, I could say Auburn has 5 new starting offensive linemen coming in, but Florida has 1 returning starter on the offensive line at left guard. That's it. And yes, the center has experience with Georgia Tech and Buster Faulkner, Harrison Moore. But outside of that, week 3 is not a lot of time for the offensive line to gel, especially I don't know how solid Auburn's starters are set in stone on the offensive line, but Florida's still trying to figure out.
I think they're pretty close. Pretty close. Yeah.
And so I think trying to figure out, finalize those and get the chemistry right. Week 3 is not a lot of time to do that. And Auburn does have the big advantage, I think, of playing Baylor early on. Because for Florida, it's going to be Florida Atlantic and Campbell. And so the real test is Auburn. For Auburn, you've at least seen a Power 4 opponent at that point, and will generally know what that's going to look like for you guys on the line.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know for sure, but still a decent jump from Baylor to Florida, but that jump is smaller than the folks you're playing to Auburn, we think. We're assuming. The new starters thing is interesting, right? Because you're correct. Auburn won't start anybody again on the offensive line unless Cale Ellis wins a spot. I don't think he's going to. But 2 of these guys did play and start under Golesh in South Florida. It's the same system. It sounds like that was a big part of the mentorship aspect and the teaching everybody on the offensive line, with Cole Best and Cole Skinner. What's that worth? It's not a returning starter, but it's a returning starter in the system with the same offensive line coach, same offensive coordinator, same head coach. That's got to count for something. And Auburn has that at every position: quarterback, running back, tight end, and then pretty much the whole receiving core. So like that has to count for something. But then the question is, can they translate? Can they translate? They all beat Florida last year, but a different scenario nonetheless. And so like when you're able to do that and forced and asked to do that over and over and over again against SEC opponents, like what is that step? What does that jump look like? And you can say that a guy has the traits and the ability to translate to the next level, but until they do it, you just don't fully know, unfortunately, from the Auburn side of it. But I do feel confident in what these South Florida guys were able to do last year. And look, we're using that Florida game as kind of an example of why it should be able to work. And so that to me is kind of what we got to look at here.
That's the thing that I find very interesting because, yes, South Florida beat Florida last year. And I'm not even going to do the whole, like, who's Billy Napier thing. I'm not doing that. But
y'all will be better this year than you were last year. There's no question.
Absolutely. Yeah. And obviously, right. I think so will Auburn. There's a reason that we have new coaches, right? Like there's a reason for that.
It didn't work. Right.
Yeah. Who'd have thought? But I will say that South Florida beat Florida scoring 18 points. This was, and absolutely, you scored enough to win. That's all you have to do.
Right.
But I do think that there is part of it of yes, South Florida beat Florida, but it's not like South Florida beat Florida in the ways that South Florida beat other teams. And I'm also not doing the whole like Florida beat themselves thing because you guys scored more. That's really all that matters. And I don't do the whole like they beat themselves, but it's not like South Florida beat Florida by doing what South Florida does. You had one.
I love that they say you guys referring to South Florida to an Auburn person because it does kind of feel that way.
Well, apologies, but is what it is. You guys took South Florida, so might as well say you guys. But yes, Byrum Brown and the receivers and the Coles on the offensive line, which I do think center and right guard, that chemistry should be awesome for you guys. I do think that center, left guard, right tackle, left guard, left tackle, that's all different chemistry there.
Left guard is going to be Derek Blaz, transfer from Miami. He's had an incredible offseason. Young guy, but we saw other parts move around. He did not. He was there. Then offensive tackle, they go out and get Joe Simmons from James Madison.
College football playoff experience.
Lost to Oregon in the CFP, but got there. And the offense was actually fine in that game. And then Stanton Ramil from Michigan State, the other tackle. The assumption going into that was Ramil being left tackle, Simmons being the right tackle, and then Ramil had a procedure done, so he was recovering. He played at the end of spring, but Simmons was the left tackle for most of spring. Does that change when Ramil's fully healthy? We'll see. But I think those are your starters, those five. I don't know which tackle is going to be where. If I had to guess, Simmons will be at left tackle. But I do think they've got a pretty clear-cut idea of, who's going to be where.
And then it's just if you guys stay healthy. This time I can say you guys and actually mean you guys. This time it's if you guys stay healthy through fall camp and just develop chemistry at that point, then sure. But I will be very interested to see. I will say also the receivers, I don't think that should concern Auburn fans. Like speed translates. I think that when you talk about the wide choice offense, I think that is more going to be about Byrum Brown translating to consistent SEC defenses. Like speed translates. If you run a 4.4 in the American, you run a 4.4 in the SEC. That's not changing. It's just a matter of who you're going up against. But fast is fast.
Yeah, windows probably get a little bit smaller, but a lot of the confidence in the offense translating is because what we saw him do at Tennessee as the OC. So it's like we know the offense works if you have the pieces, and it does seem like they have the pieces. But I'm with you. I think it's more about Byrum translating than anything else. I 100% agree. All right, we continue our conversation as far as what all is at stake when the Florida Gators come to Jordan-Hare Stadium week 3 this season. That's next on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Gators.
Running a business shouldn't feel like you're trying to connect a bunch of systems that were never designed to work together. One app for accounting, another for inventory, another for sales, and somehow none of them talk to each other. That's where Odoo comes in. Odoo is an all-in-one business management software that brings every part of your business together in one powerful platform, from sales and accounting to inventory and marketing. Everything works in one place, helping your team move faster, stay organized, and focus on growing the business instead of managing software. The best organizations know that success isn't just about talent. It's about having everyone working together toward the same goal. And that's true in sports, just like it is in business. And if you want to be a great organization, because again, great organizations win because operations matter, go to Odoo. Try for free today at odoo.com/lockedon. That's odoo.com/lockedon.
All right, thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn and Locked On Gators your first listen every single day. For your second listen, go check out the other person's show, or go check out Chris Gordy of Locked On SEC or Brian Smith over at the Portal. I love how both of these programs, though, have tremendous momentum right now when you talk about what they are doing on the recruiting trail. I mean, the belief, I think, can come from multiple places, right? It can come from the future athletes in this conference, right? Which Florida got a lot of guys early. Auburn has surged as of late to pretty much catch up. And then also belief has to come internally within the respective programs. Like alignment used to be a big theme at Auburn when it comes to money. I'm sure that came up at times during the Napier era. And clearly, like, you don't have classes like these two schools have without that alignment being there. So belief coming from separate places that are all important for both these. I don't think it's going to impact what's going to happen game 3 this year, but as far as the direction of these programs going, I want to be clear. I think the way we're talking about this week 3 matchup is, all right, whoever wins this is like, oh, that person made the right hire and the other team didn't. I think both teams made the right hire here, but obviously whoever wins is going to be in a better spot for 2026. But positive momentum for both schools on all assets, or all facets, excuse me, based on the offseason so far.
Yeah, look, alignment was not a thing that we had much of under Billy Napier. There were plenty of people who, after the first 2 years of Billy Napier, plenty of boosters who were just like, all right, I'm done giving money to this guy if he's gonna go about it the way that he's going about it and try to lowball everybody. Look, I remember we didn't really have a lot of Florida Auburn recruiting battles last year, but previous years we were seeing that quite a bit. And from the Florida side of things, it always felt like, well, if it's a money thing, Auburn's getting them. Like
who's the last Auburn Florida battle? Was it Amaris Williams?
There was Amaris. There was Jamonta Waller.
Oh, Jamonta Waller. Yeah.
There were both of those were guys that we were talking about for a while. There was TJ Dice was another one that was one of the very few when Florida actually walked away victoriously, because it felt like it was like, oh, like, well, if it comes down to money, not saying all these battles are money or that Auburn was just buying players, but if it came down to money, we kind of knew.
I don't think buying players in this era is a bad thing, by the way.
Yeah, no, but I do think fans.
Oh, they can pay more? Why is that a bad thing?
Exactly. But I do think fans take it as like, well, you didn't actually out recruit us. You just paid more, which is like, okay, get your pockets out then. That's all that means. Like get your bank account up.
Other industry, what you offer compensation wise is part of the recruiting process in any other industry.
Exactly. I think there's also a bit of a cope part of it for fans where it's just like, oh, well, they're not a better place than us. They just paid more. But it's like, I don't care. I want to pay more. And for Florida, it finally seems like there's genuine buy-in from all of the boosters where they're just like, all right, we've got the guy. And I think Auburn feels that way as well. And Auburn was paying when you guys didn't have the guy. Sorry, it was never a Hugh Freeze guy. I was never going to buy into that one. But you guys were still financially competitive without that. And so I imagine now with that buy-in, we're going to see probably more battles here, especially because Florida does have a lot of Auburn ties on their coaching staff. Or Alabama ties in general, but also Auburn ties on their coaching staff. And so I think that we're going to see those battles probably heat up over the next couple of years, especially if both these teams end up actually winning football games.
Yeah. And I think they both will. I think both teams are in a decent spot. I am going to make the argument that Auburn is in a better spot in 2026 because of quarterback. I do think that is a massive part of this. I think Florida's roster is talented. I think Auburn's roster is talented. I just think when you look at a lot of these things that typically swing games, we'll see who wins in the trenches. That's obviously going to be a massive part of this. As you've already mentioned, offensive line for both teams. We'll see which defensive line chooses to emerge by week 3 this season. But quarterbacks, we all know this, quarterback's crucial. And I'm not saying that either of the two guys start, battling for the starting Florida job can't pan out. I'm not saying that. But I do think Byrum is a safer bet right now than Jones or Philo. And I don't think that's a crazy take. Brandon, what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's a crazy take to say he's the better starting option. I don't think he's the better passer out of most of them. But I do think that it's also
holistically, like,
I mean, those
right?
legs matter. Those legs matter. First downs are first downs, touchdowns are touchdowns. It doesn't matter how you get them. And also just being a fit in the offense, knowing how to operate the offense, that all matters. I'm talking pure thrower of the football. I think Florida has the better spot there, but there's so much more that goes into playing quarterback, and offensive system comfort is a thing. Aaron Philo has played for Buster Faulkner, but this is not going to be just a copy paste Georgia Tech offense for Florida. And so I do think that Byrum Brown's his legs were more important in beating Florida last year than his arm was.
Especially late.
Yeah, he had that one big pass where, again, Florida DBs collided and it led to a long South Florida touchdown. But outside of that, he was relatively ineffective with his arm, but his legs are killer, and his legs are something that they just wind you down. He's a big dude too, and so when you've been playing a full game, especially when you go as up tempo,
he's fast too. Like, you don't realize how fast he is because he's so big.
Yeah, and when you're a DB, when you're a 6 foot 180, 190 pound DB, and you got Byrum Brown coming at you, that's not a fun thing to deal with that late in the game when you've been running vertical 50 plays so far. Like that's not a fun thing. I think Auburn should feel comfortable with Byrum Brown. I don't think Florida should feel comfortable with Aaron Philo or Tramel Jones, because personally, that's my biggest reason I'm not fully buying into 2026 is I don't know what the hell either of those guys are going to give me.
Who starts this game, you think, for Florida, if you had to guess?
I think Aaron Philo is the most likely option. He would not be my choice, but I do think that he's the most likely option at this point in the game.
So why do you think he's the most likely option? Why is he not your choice?
I think that Tramel Jones is a better passer right now, better thrower of the football. And I do think that I would prefer to take, like, if I'm taking a swing on a quarterback that's unproven, which both of these guys are, they got about a combined 130 pass attempts in their career. I'm taking the guy that has a higher ceiling, which I think Tramel Jones has. But Aaron Philo, comfort with Buster Faulkner, comfort with Harrison Moore at center. I would imagine that matters for those center quarterback exchanges and just making calls at the line. A little bit more experience in college. Only one of these quarterbacks did throw a pass against an FBS opponent last year, and that was Tramel Jones. But I do think that Philo has more comfort. Jon Sumrall has spoken positively of both of them, but he said that he thinks Aaron Philo has been more consistent, and I think that matters. But I do think that this is going to be a thing where, especially over the first 2 weeks of the season, we might see both of these quarterbacks play somewhat consistently over the first 2 weeks while still trying to figure this thing out, which, again, not a spot that makes me feel comfortable as a Florida fan. I don't like not having an answer at quarterback or offensive tackle. And that's the situation we're in for Florida.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's been our life as Auburn people for the last 5 years, not having an answer at quarterback or offensive tackle. So I feel that. I feel that. There's another element of this game that I think is a big deal, and I want you to tell me if you think it's a big deal or not. That's next, right here on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Gators. Final few minutes on this crossover edition of Locked on Auburn and Locked on Gators. So from the Auburn point of this, I think Auburn's schedule is tough. Now, I do think some of that depends on your opinion on LSU and Ole Miss. And, the sports books have Ole Miss's win total lower than kind of what feels natural. So I'm fascinated to see what happens there. And then obviously a lot of it depends on Florida, right? So I do think, though, how it starts could be advantageous for Auburn in the sense that regardless of if it's Jones or Philo, first road start is going to be a night game at Jordan-Hare Stadium. And then obviously the following week for Auburn, they host Vanderbilt, which will be Jared Curtis's first road start at Jordan-Hare Stadium. How much stock do you put into, okay, this really does benefit the home team, especially in the Florida game where it's going to be a night game, Jordan-Hare gets loud, all that stuff. How much of a factor is that in your mind?
I think it is probably the best argument if you think Auburn's going to win. I think that's probably the biggest factor.
Oh, interesting. So you think it's pretty substantial?
Yeah, I think you guys got some voodoo that goes on over there. There's no secret about that.
Weird things happen for sure.
Yeah, weird things always happen. And so I think you guys got some voodoo going on there. And like you mentioned, for both, whoever starts for Florida, This is going to be their first road start in
Right.
the SEC. Like first road start and first SEC start and first road SEC start. There's a lot that goes into it. It's also going to be, if it's Tramel Jones, it's going to be his first Power 4. Actually, if it's either one of them, it's going to be their first Power 4 start, or first FBS start. So for a lot of them, it's not easy. It's not fun. And I'm not going to say it is. And again, like, you might have 2 starts under your belt if you're either one and you've started the first 2 games, but that's not first Power 4 start. Like those are not Power 4 games. That's going to be your first Power 4 start. Ain't a fun place to go into it.
Do you think it's truly a battle, or do you think this is all performative? The quarterback situation at Florida.
I think it's truly a battle. I don't like that I can't say that I know it's a battle. Just because for me, we've heard so much about Jon Sumrall, Buster Faulkner talk about, hey, the things that matter to us are explosive plays and protecting the football. And a lot of the, print media reporting has been, hey, Aaron Philo's turning the ball over. Tramel Jones getting these big, deep plays. The spring game, Aaron Philo turned the ball over. Tramel Jones had the big play touchdowns. But then they come out and it's like, oh, yeah, Aaron Philo's been really consistent. And so I'm a little torn on it. But I also will say that for a lot of Florida's reporting, it's been secondhand reporting. So I do think that, you play the game of telephone long enough and things are going to get messy. And so I don't know. I think that based on what I've seen, I like Tramel Jones more. But I've seen very little of what these guys have actually done in 11-11.
How open are practices at Florida?
You basically get to see everything except 7-on-7 and team portions.
Okay, so it's indie stuff. That's pretty much how Auburn is.
You watch
twice a week we saw indie stuff, and that was it.
So. Yeah, there's more time than they got under Napier, but still, you're not seeing the important part of playing quarterback, especially. And so,
right. Yeah, you'll see him throwing against air or whatever. Right. Interesting. All right. I'm sure we'll do this several more times before the season starts. So, looking forward to that.
We can do it before Florida beats Auburn. Week 3. We can do it whatever you want.
We'll do it going into the game for sure.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Sure. And if Auburn wins, we could do one the week after if you want.
Only if Auburn wins? That's it? Correct. That's all you're open to? Only if Auburn wins?
I don't want to do this if it goes the other way.
You don't want to do it if it goes the other way. Okay. So I got to be thrown into the fire for your fan base that tags me,
I feel like more Auburn people go to you than Florida people go to me. So I feel like that's fair.
I don't think that's fair. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's fair to say, hey, you're going to be criticized more, so you go ahead and do that. I don't want to hear that. I get tagged by that fan base all the time. I don't want to deal with it. That Discord, they just like to yap. That's it. But don't worry. I know I'm the bad guy if I take shots at you guys back. I know.
Yeah. At least you're aware. At least you're aware now of the double standard that exists. So, Brandon Olsen, for Auburn folks who don't know, how can they check out everything you've got going on?
Locked On Gators twice a day. Twice a day.
Let's go. Yeah, and however you consume Locked On Gators, you can consume Locked On Auburn and vice versa. For Brandon Olsen of Locked On Gators, I am Zach Blackerby of Locked On Auburn. This has been a crossover edition of Locked On Auburn and Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Keyshawn Singleton's the best Singleton.